The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
All systems go.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest is the founder and creator of Encompass Media, who brings a unique blend of skills as a paranormal investigator and as a psychic medium. He's currently focused on creating paradocs about historical locations and people, all while hosting 4 podcast shows of his own. All this plus more. Please welcome a new friend to our show, podcaster, paranormal investigator, and psychic medium, Jay Hill. Jay, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome.
It is, man. And as we've been contacting each other here for the last couple of months, and you send me some quick bio about what you do. And I'm going to say this, my friend, with you being involved with 4 podcasts, look, I'm already stressing out doing 2 shows. I don't know how you find the time or how you do it, but let's get into those. What are the names of your shows?
Well, I started with Studio 6 Paranormal Podcast, and then I kind of evolved into different ones. Kind of when the mood hits me, I have an idea for one, and I just kind of run with it. But currently, right now, I have Paranormal Saloon, and then I have Paranormal Memoirs, which is my own memoirs of the paranormal that I've experienced throughout my life. So I've got great stories on that one. I've also got 32, which is a spiritual podcast with Elizabeth Mariquin, who's another medium, and we talk about how to kind of like level up spiritually, and we have certain guests on there telling us their stories and this and that. I also have a new metal show. It's not paranormal, but I'm not going to say that I haven't not talked about paranormal and interviewing a metal artist. Metal music has been a passion of mine my whole life, but when I was young, I kind of grew up and met a lot of musicians over the years and this and that. But so now it's kind of like I've always wanted to do a metal show, so I just put it together and had a few great guests already, and some notable ones, and I'm kind of happy about that. So I've got some other ones lined up, some people that you may know eventually and you may not have heard of, but I think everybody is kind of equal and they've got a great musical story to tell.
Absolutely true. On the other show that I do, Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, I also interview some metal bands too. The ones that are up and coming. And I've been a fan of metal since I was 8 years old. This
Nice.
is a very, very long time, and I think it all started right around. My age might be off, but it started right around 1983 for me.
Yeah, that's about when it started for me. I was into Kiss in late 70s, Zeppelin in the early 80s, and then I kind of graduated to a lot of the hair bands in the mid 80s. Yeah, it's been kind of up and down for me, but I got into a lot of the death metal type stuff in the late 80s and early 90s, and I kind of just listen to everything. But I don't just listen to metal. I mean, I love the 50s crooner music. I love Sinatra. I love, Sammy Davis, Dean Martin, all that. Vegas back in the 50s was where it was at.
Yeah, that was kind of the Sunset Strip, like glam rock was in California.
Yeah.
That's where it was at there. And it's funny you mentioned that, because as I've gotten older, and I'm still a metalhead, born and bred, but you start listening to some stuff. You talk about the 50s, even the 40s and stuff like that. Like you start listening to bands or musicians like Little Richard, had high energy in the music. Even guys like, you have Elvis, you have somewhat, the Beatles, of course, were very innovative for their time. And then in the 80s, I was like, I'm never listening to that stuff. You ever heard
I
of?
kind of thought that too, but that changed.
Yeah. But let's talk about how you got started in podcasting, because you have 4. So, which of them came first, or was there something prior to these shows?
Okay, so I had a paranormal team in Wisconsin here called the Wisconsin Paranormal Research, and it kind of fizzled out. It didn't really last. I couldn't keep any members. They were all moving away on me. They thought they had other opportunities, which I was, happy for them. But I think I only did like 1 or 2 or 3 investigations in that time around 2019, 2020, and then COVID hit, and that changed everything. But I was a guest on a show, and it was weird because I kind of felt like, that was my first show, so it was really strange. And I'm being interviewed, and like I am now, but there was too much dead air, and there was too much. I don't know. It was just kind of odd, and I the whole time I'm thinking, this is what I would have done. This is what I would have asked. This is, and so after I got done with that, I thought to myself, I could probably do this better. And Spirit kind of said to me, why don't you? And I'm like, maybe I will. About 2 weeks later, I saw an ad on Facebook for a guy whose name's Shane Feek. He's a good friend of mine. And he was looking for a co-host for a paranormal show because his host quit, just up and quit, and left him in the lurch. So I contacted him, and he said, yeah, he says, I'm looking for a co-host and this and that. And I said, yeah, I would love to, try out for that, and, and see, if I can do it. And after a long conversation, we kind of got to know each other a little bit. And he said, to be honest with you, Jay, he said, I kind of would like you to be the host. So not only did I leapfrog from that phone call, I went from wanting to possibly be a co-host to being a host. And he says, yeah, you can just do anything you want. I'm like, okay. So I took care of all the posters, all the advertisement, all the video intros, everything. I just did it all. And he just showed up every week. And he was okay with that. And I was okay with that too, because once I realized that I was in charge of, I was doing it all, and he was more of a, he would put his 2 cents in it, or he would have an idea, whatever. But he just liked being a co-host. He just liked showing up, and that was about it. And that's totally fine. So I had a lot of ideas, and it was kind of funny. And then all of a sudden, I'm now running the show, and having, as a new podcaster, having the ups and downs that comes with it, with bad audio or hot mics or stuff like that. I mean, so I started realizing after me and him dispersed the show, because we had been on for like 3 years, and I decided to do something else, and then I decided to incorporate something else, and I get an idea, and yeah, it's like, and I'm actually, today I had an idea for a really good one that I'm probably going to put together when I come back. So I'll probably have another one to add that, and it's and it's all about history, and so I really love talking about history, so. And being a psychic medium, it makes it that much more interesting, just because I get to look back into the past a little bit and kind of get to see certain things about how they lived, or, how they would act, and this and that. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I really enjoy what I do. I mean, I work, a 9 to 5 job. No, actually a 6 to 5 job. But, yeah, I find time to try to do shows at night, because that's when my free time is. And, so I'm just, if I have an idea, I try to run with it. But yeah, so that's how it got started. And now it's just kind of snowballed into this whole, what show can I create now? So.
Yeah, you have to almost invent time, because there's a lot involved with this. Not only you're interviewing the guests, but you're also setting them up and scheduling them, and then you have to do the research on the individuals or the bands or the history. So there's a lot more involved than just getting on here on a microphone and
This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had people that I thought I had vetted, and there was a couple that were kind of a disaster, but I made them work. But yeah, you really have to kind of do your due diligence and look out for yourself and who you're interviewing and this and that, and so I've had several different pieces of equipment with the podcasting. I've been through 3 different microphones, 2 different computers, 2 different monitors, because I just use them, and I just upgrade. You know what I mean? So I think now my computer is no bigger than a DVD. Except, I mean, it's thick, but I mean, it's that size, and it's a gaming computer that's got everything I need. And I had it outside the other day, last weekend. I went to a party. It was actually a little small metal fest music, and I interviewed people outside, and my computer, and it was hot and humid, but I tell you what, that I didn't realize that thing had a small fan in it, and it kept that thing cool all day long. I didn't have any issue. I was like, now if I had my tower out there, that thing would have blew up. So there's a lot of podcasting isn't as easy as everybody thinks. It's not about just getting on there, like you say, getting on there and speaking on a microphone, and there you have it. There's a lot of ins and outs and things that can go wrong, and it's not easy by any means.
No, and you're talking about upgrading equipment. I'm on when I first started podcasting, I had a laptop, but that thing could not keep up.
Right. I got 3. So yeah, I know what you mean.
And then this is actually my 4th mic, and I actually got a nice PC, but I'm thinking I might need to upgrade pretty soon too. Because now I'm thinking, because you also, if you edit videos and stuff like that, you need something that runs a little bit faster, a little more RAM. But this is turning into a bit of a techie episode, which is okay because I kind of love this kind of thing.
Right.
But
the computer I have is great for graphics, but the monitor I have is a 1440, and yeah, so I do some of my editing on my computer, and I'm able to put stuff together, and that thing is, like I said, smaller than a bread box, and that I love it. I could pretty much fit it in my back pocket.
Thinking I might have to upgrade yet again, my friend, or have something mobile. But talk about monitors, because I first started with 1, and I did 2. Now I got a gigantic one here because it's just better having all these.
Yeah, I have a 27-inch curved monitor. So yeah, that's probably about as big as I want to go. I might do a 32 eventually, but if you really think about it, it's like, remember when we were younger, and when we would have a 32-inch TV, we thought we were the Joneses. And now 32-inch TV is nothing.
Yeah, I had a black and white, man, small TV back then.
So did I.
Yeah.
Used to watch MASH on it.
Yeah. I watched Happy Days of Shirley wrestling.
I
watched
think we
it all,
dated ourselves.
Oh, they already know I'm old. They see my pictures. But now when we're talking about, because you're doing these paradocs coming soon, and then you have the podcast and you're interviewing people in the paranormal field. Well, let's go back a little bit, because on our conversation when we're using the messenger, you sent me some information about you. You mentioned something that it kind of hit me, because it's very similar to me, although you have abilities that I don't. But let me read it. It reads like this. You stated the paranormal has followed me since I was little, and it never left. And that kind of hit me. I'm not gonna lie to you, because it's similar to my experiences. So let's touch on this if you don't mind, because it seems that from your interviews and from people I've interviewed that a good number of people that either started in the paranormal or somewhere down the line developed a gift of some sorts. That it all started at a young age. What is your earliest recollection of this?
16. Yeah. Well, that's when I saw my first full body apparition. Was it standing at the foot of my bed? And actually, I knew it was real because my sister had a room next to me and she experienced the same thing after I told my mother that. And then she come running down the stairs and she was sharing the same exact thing. And my mom kind of thought we were playing a joke on her. And we were like, no, we're not. And so, but I've been, because of who I am, I always wondered what what kind of person I was in that spiritual sense. I mean, I've always felt and viewed myself as more spiritual than physical. I've always felt that way. Even when I was little, I just didn't feel like I was always tangible. I just felt more transparent. It was, if that makes any sense. So when I was younger, I used to have nightmares, and I realized what it was then, that there was an individual in the darkness that was always constantly chasing me, and it was the same one, and it wasn't nothing that I had ever seen, but it was just that those dreams were very vivid, and he was always trying to get to me and prevent me from doing something or whatever. Well, now I realize that it was what I'm doing now is helping the dead cross over and helping those who are lost and doing that. So it's just one of those things where when I was 16, I experienced that, and then as I got older, I had mediumship moments, and I knew what it was, but I wasn't back then. It really wasn't something that you would follow or chase after because it was still kind of a passe, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so I just basically kind of just tucked it away, but it would benefit me at times, and I've got great stories on my paranormal memoirs just from my experiences of how my gifts had developed over the years. And it wasn't until after I had my stroke in 2012, 13, and after that, when I was in my recovery, and after the next few years, my gifts were really predominant, or really potent in that sense, and really kind of opened up who I was just because of that. And I look back at that, and it happened that way for a reason, and it was a multi-reasonable thing that happened to me, because I quit drinking and I changed a little bit, how I acted, who I was, my character, and I became better at who I was, and I try to live by that motto of be better than you were yesterday and be genuine. And I just really felt that I have something that a person could benefit from. And yeah, so.
And touching on the subject of what we're just talking about, this psychic medium, when you're interviewing some of your guests on one of your shows, does that ability sometimes pop up as you're speaking to
Oh
a
yeah.
guest?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's when I used to do Cemetery Files show with Kelly Schaefer, there was a few couple guests that my mediumships would automatically come out, and I would start asking them questions and this and that, and it would freak the guest out, not in a bad way, but it was just like a kind of like in awe, and would talk about a location that they say that they live at that's haunted and everything, and I could describe what's there and what's happened, and I kind of look back. For some reason, I'm able to look back at certain events that have happened. So if like there's a lady that she had a haunted farm or something like that, and there's something that happened there previously, and I can kind of see that it's like a rewind, and it'll be like, did this happen and this that, and she's like, how do you know that? And it's like, it's like turning on the TV and seeing a replay of a movie that you've seen 1,000 times. It's like, oh, I know that scene, or it's just that familiar. It's familiar to me. So I'm able to do that. So yeah, so it's come across where I've kind of gave my guests some impromptu readings, but they were good sports about it. They weren't offended or they weren't upset or anything like that, but they were really grateful. But it happened that way for a reason, and I was a firm believer, and my guest was a firm believer too. Like, there was a reason why I came on this show, and there's a reason why you gave me that impromptu reading. So there were messages, or there were some things that they were looking for that they couldn't figure out that I had an answer for. And why is this happening in this barn? And what is there and this and that, and I would have to explain to them what is there and why that is there, and then it made sense to them, and like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. So I do not a lot, but I can do remote viewing fairly easy, and I have to be careful because sometimes if I do it too long, I can kind of mess my brain up, where like I'll be driving. I had this happen a couple times where I didn't know I was doing it, but I was driving down the highway once, and I was on my way to work when I worked far away, and I've been every single way you possibly can go, but I was trying to pick which way I really felt like going, and so I'm thinking in my mind and envisioning the road and the turns and this and that where I was, or where I was supposed to go to work. And all of a sudden, I realized that I was putting myself there more so than I really needed to be. And then when I kind of snapped back into my mind when I'm driving, nothing looked familiar, and it freaked the crap out of me. Well, yeah, so I have to kind of be careful. I don't linger on the remote side too long, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. It's like walking into a room and you got this feeling like, yeah, I kind of know this, but you really don't want to be there. And then when you feels like you got to leave, and then I snap back, and it's like, where am I? Because I kind of lose where I'm at, and everything looks unfamiliar, and that's freaky. So I have to kind of be careful how I do that.
Yes, especially from a safety perspective, because sometimes you don't know where you're going to land, right?
Yeah, exactly. I really have to, especially when I'm driving 65 on the highway.
Especially during that, my friend. Well,
So I try not to do that anymore. I try not to. It's almost like daydreaming. You know how when people daydream and then they're like in a haze. That's kind of like me, like what I experienced, but a little bit more intense. So when I'm trying to find some place to go or whatever, I don't look too far ahead, or I'll know it when I get there. You know what I mean? So it's a learned experience with being a medium.
and as you were telling me this, and you kind of, I believe you answered the question, but let me see if I might have missed something there. When you get, I'm going to use a generic term, and I'm sure I'll hear about it from using incorrect terminologies, but I'm going to use the word when you're in this trance, right? Is that okay to use the word?
Yeah, that's safe to use.
All right. When you're in this trance and you're able to see these events,
Mm-hmm.
how does that look like to you? Is it similar to if you were turning on a TV and you see something happening? Are you there in that time?
It's usually I've had it both, actually. More so I'm there. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I'm there. I'm like looking at it. It's almost like looking through a window. You know what I mean? Or I'm standing on the outside looking in. You know what I mean? That's the best way to describe it. So um yeah, so there'll be things like when I do remote viewing, there's my friend Elizabeth Merriquin, we would practice our remote viewing she would hide something in her house. And then I'm on the phone, and I would have to remote view where it's at. And that was a good tool. And it was really pretty cool. It's not as easy as everybody thinks it is, but yeah, usually when I remote view on purpose, like I really am trying to focus or whatever, if I'm looking for something or whatever I'm looking for is usually like 2 inches from my face, so I can't really see it. I have to step back and look and say, "Oh, okay," because it's really weird. Because like if I have to force it, then I'm kind of like putting too much pressure on myself, and things get distorted. So it has to come to me naturally. If somebody asks me something, I got this house and this and that, da da da, and I don't know what it is, and it's really bugging me. Well, that's kind of like an invitation to go look, and I ask her, "You mind if I look?" And they're like, "Sure, go ahead." And then I'll look and see, and then I could tell them, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I don't like to do that without getting permission because it's an invasion of privacy.
Yeah, and so what does that do to you physically when you are in that state where, let's say, somebody gives you a target, you try to find this item in their home from somewhere else? How do you feel? How does your body feel?
Not a thing. It's just like a normal part of me. It's just like when somebody's talking about a memory of, remember when we used to do this, and I would just kind of go back and think about, oh yeah, that was really fun when we did that. That's exactly what it is. It's nothing. I don't feel anything unless the spirit or if there's something there that knows that I'm there remotely and then tries to interact or something, or tries to touch me, my essence or my spirit in that sense. I might get a little bit of alert, my head might buzz a little bit, but other than that, no, it's just a normal thing for me.
And why, with these abilities, sometimes I could only imagine that there are times when you're involved, and then let's say maybe something doesn't go right, or maybe a negative spirit makes its presence. Have you had any type of experiences like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've been sworn at, I've been assaulted. um See, but the thing with that is they don't realize that I can see their true colors, so to speak. So I know what they are. So it's not so much whereas in if there's a negative entity or spirit that's just a really angry spirit and is trying to portray himself as something worse, yeah, I'll usually call him out on that and be like, yeah, no, you're not that. So stop trying to be that. And you know, and I'll try to talk to him like a human, like a regular person. I don't try to. I don't claim to be all powerful or anything like that because I'm not. I'm just a normal person. I just have gifts that I can communicate. So you know,
Well, I appreciate you answering that question. I know sometimes I'm unsure when I ask these things if it's too personal, but it seems
yeah.
that,
Mm-mm. My life's kind of an open book.
oh no, that's great, which gives me more room to ask more questions. No, but I'm kidding, of course. But you are, as earlier we're having the pre-interview. You about ready to do an investigation coming up,
Yeah, yeah.
and where are we going?
Felicity, Ohio, and it's called the Broadwell Funeral Home, built in 1910. And the last team that was in there kind of left really quickly because it was just a lot of negativity and whatnot. My team that I'm with, Kelly Schaefer, she decided that we need to do something about this and we need to find out what's there. So I viewed it and I knew what was there. I can't say what's there, but it's not as bad as some people may think it is. I don't know the whole history because I choose not to know the history of anything. You know what I mean? Any place I investigate, it's
Yeah.
got to be like, it's like taking somebody to a new place. I want to be blindfolded. I don't want to see anything. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want, you know what I mean? I want to be able to experience all these firsthand so that I can have the validation of, yes, this is correct. This is what it is. And this is who it is. And so there's a system, there's some stuff that we're going to be doing to aid this location and, you know, find out some secrets and some history about this place. You know, if excuse me, if spirit didn't really want me to go, spirit would tell me, no, you're not going to that. I've been invited to a couple places that spirit said absolutely not, because it's been nothing but negative and the energy is way off and it would really disrupt my frequency, and I don't need that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, ridiculously interesting you just said this, because I was going to ask you a follow-up question, because you've chosen the location to go. And I was going to ask you, does these spirits know when you're on the way? And you kind of almost answered
Yes.
that.
Yeah, they know. They don't know exactly who I am, but they know I'm on the way. Spirit is really good about keeping some of my stuff incognito. Yeah, so not
And
every
is there a
spirit
way?
can, yeah, not every spirit can read the living. Actually, a lot of them can't. I mean, they can and they can't. It's kind of a gray area. If you're very, very open and it just flies out of you, and then, so it's like there's no guardian or guards or whatever on your spiritual body, that's an opening invitation to make yourself get in trouble and get hurt. I'm very protected. I protect myself daily. I'm surrounded by loving entities. I have angelic. I have, a lot of people don't know this, but I have somewhat angelic blood in my line, and yeah, so I'm very protected. I mean, one of the last mediums I talked to a few years ago, she looked into me, which was fine. But she said, I can't believe how protected you are. She was like, holy cow. And I said, there's a reason for that, because of what I do. My main goal is to help the living, but my other goal is to help the living as well as the deceased.
Because they can tell what your intentions are.
Right. If your intentions are pure, your intentions are nothing but good, they're going to see that. They're also going to see if you're going to be disrespectful, or you're going to be an ass, or you're going to be, you know, like somebody on a television show demanding to see the spirit or hear a spirit. You know, that's just disrespectful, and that irritates me, because you got to look at it. You got to put the shoe on the other foot. You got to, you know, when you have a house and you invite people, or, you know, people come into your house, you want them to be most, you know, respectful and kind, and they don't, you know, you don't want them to rip your house apart, or, you know, do this or demand anything. So why would you do that to somebody who's not living, that is still there? Why would you disrespect them in that? They were once a living person. They deserve that respect in that sense.
Yes, because I tend not to watch a lot of these paranormal shows for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost I'm like, are you really? Is that the way you're going to do it?
Right.
And
It's
some
for
are surprised.
ratings.
Yeah, absolutely, for ratings. And then you're surprised when you find scratches on your own bruises. Well, I mean, hell,
Right. Right. And 9 times out of 10, that's just an angry spirit that can manipulate things, you know. So spirits can pick up tricks and little tricks here and there the longer they're on this plane, on the air, you know, on this plane, but in the spirit world, you know. Once they cross over into the light, then all bets are off. They go where they go. You know, they got to do what they got to do. You know, so.
And once they cross, um, and all the usually terminologies depends on what kind of faith people have. So where exactly would they go?
And to be honest with you, I really don't. The only thing that I do know of where they go is they go to the ascension, where they kind of, you know, rise up, or they, you know, depending on their frequency, depending on if they're low level frequency, or if they're higher, but if they have high vibrations or low vibrations, it just depends. You know, I mean, it's not so much where you have to believe in a certain way. It's just, I think every person is different in how you interpret what your life, how you wanted your life to be, you know. And I don't know. I mean, there's been a couple times where I know that there's people that have crossed over, and all I hear a lot of that they're going back to school, which means that evidently they didn't learn what they needed to learn on this round trip of your next life. Come on down, you know. So
Maybe that's why some of them are kind of restless,
yeah,
because
a lot of
they
them
didn't get
don't
it
want to.
right this time.
Yeah, but a lot of them don't want to cross because of the fact that they feel immense guilt, and that keeps them there. That B, their fear of the retribution from whatever is beyond the light, or C, they just feel like they have to be here because they still have something to do, or they're in a loop where they can't get out, and they're just repeating the same thing over and over again because that's what they know. You know, so yeah, there's different reasons. Plus, people don't realize that, you know, we have free will and free choice here. You know, land of the free. Well, on the other side, before you go to the light, you have free will too. Hence, why we have spirits that like to hang around, because it's their choice. Not to say that family members or whatever don't try to convince them to go into the light or do whatever, you know, but it's just if they choose not to. Most of it is grief, guilt, and lack of finishing something. Or anger. Yeah, they have to be, if they're really angry and they just are pissed off that they're dead, then that can keep them here too. So
During the course of a lot of these investigations, because you're also doing paradox, and are you combining these two things together when you do your paradox, and how do you choose these locations?
well, it just depends. Because I've been trying to incorporate the two, but because with lack of funds and whatnot, I've kind of had to shelve some of that stuff. I need to go back to Gettysburg because I'm really being called to Gettysburg. I haven't really been there to Gettysburg, but I mean, I need to go there. I need to kind of start there. I went to Tombstone to try to thinking I was going to start one of my paradox in the Old West, but I didn't get the reception I thought I was going to get, and I really was kind of let down by Tombstone. I love Tombstone, don't get me wrong, and the spirits there, some of them were really cool and whatnot, but it really held nothing for me. I knew that I was in the wrong spot, wrong time, wrong spot, and my initial plan was to go to Gettysburg, but I couldn't afford it. It was just too expensive. So I thought the next best thing, which is Tombstone, which was on my bucket list, which I can write off, but it was cool, you know, but it was kind of a letdown, you know. And so I it's kind of what making these paradoxes kind of a trial and error thing. I'm not an experienced videographer or anything like that, you know. It's just hands-on experience that I've, done things in over the years. But you know, I do have good interviews with people and good rapport with certain people and this and that. So I was trying to incorporate some of that with my paradox, and I wanted to be able to interview people, but I was just at that time I was in the wrong spot in the wrong place, in the wrong area. I should have started somehow. I should have started back in Gettysburg, because that's what's really calling me. Gettysburg has been calling me for years. And I actually have relatives. I had like a second great uncle or first great uncle that was a Confederate, that was a captain in one of the Confederacies. And it's just, I think I have one on the Union side too. I'm not sure, but yeah, I have a great history line. I mean, I go back to all the way back to my second great grandfather, my third great grandfather, William Henry, was good friends with John Adams. So,
Well, maybe that's where you need to be, because you talked about Tombstone, wrong place, wrong time, because not every location is a home run. Sometimes it's kind of a dud.
yeah. My third great grandfather is buried in North Carolina, I think it is, at the Hilton Estate. And he was the first Attorney General of North Carolina appointed by George Washington, which I thought was really cool. So I know that some of my ancestors, back in the Civil War, even before that, the Revolutionary War, I have family members in that. I did a deep dive in genealogy on my dad's side, and I found a lot of cool stuff, kind of what made me who I am today, and some of that. And paranormal, I just love that whole Victorian era type buildings, all that stuff. So yeah, anytime I see anybody post anything about Gettysburg, I'm usually watching it or liking it. So,
And with your getting back into traveling and doing the investigations, and maybe down the line, continue doing these paradox, where are you going to be later this year?
I was trying to plan a trip later this year to Gettysburg, but I don't think that's in the cards this year. I really don't. But I might have some investigations around here. I might put something together. There's some older buildings here in town that I've been wanting to investigate. And I'll probably just keep doing my podcast, and my new one that I'm thinking about today will have a lot to do with history, so I might be able to incorporate that in some of these old buildings. So
Awesome, man. I know you're going to keep being busy, and if you're going to keep adding more podcasts, I'm just going to keep subscribing to them. And for the listeners of Let's Find Out that want to learn more about you, your podcast, and your investigations, where can they go find out?
you can find me on YouTube under N''Compass Media. And you can find me on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram, same thing, Encompass Media. Find me Jay Hill on Instagram, Paranormal Saloons on Instagram. You also find me on TikTok under Encompass Media, under Podcaster Jay, and you can find me on Facebook as well. You can find me under jayd.hill. You can find me there, and I usually post a lot of my stuff for my Encompass on there. My metal show is also, all those shows that I have are all under Encompass Media on YouTube, and I did that just because I didn't want to create a bunch of different pages and accounts. I just, wanted to be able to have everything underneath that umbrella. So, and it works because I, let other people post some stuff under there if they need to.
That's the way to go, because you go all these platforms, you got to upload them everywhere, and it's better just have it in one single location. And I really appreciate you being on the show. I know you're very busy, and I'd love to bring you back later in the year. Let's talk about some up and coming metal bands and see what we grew up with, and we can play some favorites and see if do a little. Do you like Black Sabbath better with Ozzy or with Dio? Things like that. Do you like Ace? Are you more of a Vinnie Vincent guy? These are things we'll find out later this year.
Right. You can also find me anywhere you get your podcast. I have audio files of all my shows listed up on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Pandora, wherever. So I'm everywhere, and it's under Encompass Media. So
perfect, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I'll talk to you later this year.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend.
Copyright Diego the Podcaster. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out with Diego is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.